Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Monday, July 1st, and today is day 269 since October 7th. A few key highlights from the humanitarian situation in Gaza today. A 9-year-old girl was killed by an unexploded ordnance in Khan Yunis. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society and its partners inaugurated the first shelter site for displaced people with disabilities. And the unaffordability of many food items combined with limited humanitarian access are further hindering access to nutritious food across Gaza, according to aid organizations. Concerns are also growing about the spread of cholera throughout Gaza, according to UNRWA, the UN Refugee Agency. Palestinian Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for a barrage of some 20 rockets that were aimed at Israeli communities on the Gaza envelope. And the Israeli Defense Forces said that most of the rockets fell in open areas, causing no damage or casualties. Today, we heard the terrible news that several neighborhoods in Khan Yunis were given evacuation orders. I don't know, well, I did hear that this hit the news in Israel, but when I texted a dear friend in Gaza earlier today, their response was, "Oh, dear God in heaven, what madness." They went on to say that they have an uncle in Khan Yunis, that they have colleagues there, and that there's no place for them to go. But Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, said the Israeli Defense Forces called on residents and displaced people in neighborhoods in eastern Khan Yunis to evacuate to an area of the western side of the city, which the military has officially designated as a humanitarian zone. And so this is one of the things that we've been seeing throughout October is that people are displaced and then displaced again and then displaced again, and that there are these areas that are called humanitarian zones, but really there's no clear place where people can go that's safe. Prime Minister Netanyahu said during a speech at the National Security College, "We're progressing to the end phase of eliminating Hamas's military." He added that the fighting in Gaza will continue against what is left of the, quote, terrorist organization, end quote. And I'll just state that, again, that's in contradiction to what we heard from the IDF chief, the IDF spokesperson a few weeks ago, who said Hamas is an ideology that cannot be defeated. According to the health ministry, the death toll as of the most recent numbers is 37,900 Palestinians killed and at least 87,060 Palestinians in Gaza wounded since October 7th. Yesterday, on Sunday, the Washington Post reported that Gaza's remaining hospitals will stop working in 2 days. So that means tomorrow, that the hospitals, all hospitals in Gaza will stop working. That's according to health officials, that because of the Rafah border crossing, that key supply lines have been cut off. This is because of the lack of fuel that has not been allowed into Gaza. All the while, fighting has continued in Shujaiya, Gaza City, according to the IDF. The other morning, just as an update, I was coming back the other morning from Alexandria, and I was driving into the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and I was coming into the city and I saw to myself this plume of smoke that was coming from just one part of the city. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that's a bomb. And then I thought, I'm in Washington, D.C. Wait a minute. And I had to just kind of catch myself. Of course, it's not a bomb. I'm in D.C. That doesn't happen here. And then I had to remind myself it happens every day, numerous times a day in Gaza. I mean, literally, that's what I saw when I was there just a few weeks ago. And, today I was prepping these notes and I was reading the news and I was sitting in a park and I was near DC's airport and I was waiting for a ride and there were all kinds of airplanes going by and I found myself getting nervous by all these sounds in the air. And actually a helicopter flew by. And the last time I heard a helicopter was when there was an Israeli military helicopter and it was actually shooting near the Gaza border. And I just kept thinking, how blessed we are, those of us who live in parts of the world where there is daily peace. And so the next time you're in a moment and you think, oh, this is a beautiful sunrise, or oh, this is a beautiful moment, or the sun is shining, or oh, the next time you have a moment of peace, say a prayer for peace for the people of Gaza, for people in the West Bank, for where there are incursions and settler attacks, for where there are hostages being held who desperately need to be returned home. Say a prayer for peace. I've learned that Israel has more than 45 American-made Apache helicopters that are they're mostly armed with 30-millimeter automatic cannons, wing-mounted 70-millimeter rockets, and Hellfire missiles. Reuters also reported that the U.S. has sent more than 14,000 200-pound bombs since October. Currently, there is a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs that's being held. It's only 1,800 bombs that are being held. We've already sent 14,000. So President Biden made the comment and said he's not going to send 1,800 of these 2,000-pound bombs because they could cause too much potential harm to civilians in Gaza. And I thought, what about the 14,000 that you have already sent since October? That was just reported by Reuters. Israel released the director of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, Mohammed Abu Salmiya, who was detained for about 7 months, along with 50 other Palestinians. According to Palestinian reports, Abu Salmiya said that Israel arrests everyone, including medical teams. There are prisoners who have died from torture. There are physicians and medical staff members who are still being held and are in need of treatment. According to Haaretz, the decision to release Abu Salmiya was based on the recommendations from Shin Bet and the IDF intelligence. Following a re-evaluation of information about him, a security official told the news, Shin Bet said that it had been warning about prison overcrowding for about a year, and that the limited prison space also leads to the cancellation of arrests against wanted individuals in Gaza and the West Bank. Al Jazeera aired footage yesterday claiming to show Israeli soldiers using Palestinians arrested in Gaza as human shields. The videos showed soldiers strapping cameras to detainees whose hands are tied and dressing them with the uniform and vests before sending them into damaged houses and tunnel shafts. And 972 magazine just published an article that was entitled "More Horrific Than Abu Ghraib, Lawyer Recounts a Visit to an Israeli Detention Center." The subtitle was "The Taman Khaled Majneh found a detained journalist unrecognizable as he described the facility's violent and inhumane conditions." This was that facility that was a prison facility that was built in the Negev desert outside of Gaza. This it's spelled SDE, the Sde Taman Detention Center. There have been such horrific reports of the terrible conditions and abuse there. And I was wondering if it had been closed yet. On June 11th, the Israeli government announced the gradual closure of the facility following damning reports in several media outlets that had published gut-wrenching accounts of torture, human rights abuses. This was the military-run detention center that was in the Negev desert. Israel's Supreme Court also sought to find answers about the condition of inmates in response to a petition that was filed on May 23rd from several Israeli human rights organizations, including the Association for the Civil Rights in Israel. The Israeli government notified the court that out of 700 Palestinians held there, 500 had been transferred to Ofer prison and to another military prison. The fate of the remaining 200 captives remained unknown. Conditions in the prisons located in occupied territories have worsened since October 7th. And according to Reuters, at least 18 Palestinians have been reportedly killed in Israeli custody since October 7th. In other news, fighting between Hezbollah and the Israeli military has continued on the border between Lebanon and Israel. And U.S. Secretary of State Blinken addressed a conference in D.C. and stated that there were 3 things that are unacceptable for Gaza's future: an Israeli occupation, Hamas perpetrating its leadership, and chaos, anarchy, or lawlessness. And it just made me wonder, does Secretary Blinken not know that Gaza is currently lawless? Because that's been the #1 reason that humanitarian assistance has not been able to be delivered within Gaza. It's not actually because Hamas has been deterring aid. It's actually been because of unrest. And so I was just wondering, there was no mention of that. But on Lebanon, Blinken said that none of the main actors want a war. On the other hand, you have forces and momentum that may be leading in another direction. Blinken added that the end of the war in Gaza is critical to reaching an agreement between Israel and Lebanon through diplomacy. We've been saying this since October. And so I would hope our diplomats would do better. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the West Bank said that a 46-year-old woman and a 15-year-old teen were killed by the IDF in the North Shams refugee camp east of Tulkarm. An Israeli security source told Haaretz that the teen was probably killed by the IDF and the woman by an unexploded IDF ordnance. 2 Palestinians were arrested while wounded in the West Bank city of Jenin last week, and they told the BBC that Israeli soldiers forced them on a hood of a military jeep and drove them alongside village roads. And I wanted to close by giving you an update on the 10 of Nations. I received a text this morning from Dawood Nasser. Many of you know him. And by now, you might have heard the news that there was supposed to be a court case tomorrow about the 10 of Nations that was postponed. And this just reminded me of this expression I heard when I first moved to Jerusalem in 2010, death by 1,000 paper cuts. The idea is 1,000 small infractions, wounds, cuts, and one slowly bleeds to death. This postponement feels like that. It just feels like one more cut where you're slowly bleeding to death. And so pray for the Nasser family. Pray for Dawood, his wife Jihan. Pray for Daher. Pray for their entire family. We received this message, this is what he said, from their attorneys, stating that the Land Registration Committee of the Israeli Civil Administration in the West Bank has decided to cancel the session that was scheduled for tomorrow, July 2nd. The attorney's message reads, after waiting for an entire year, it's very unfortunate that the Land Registration Committee has delayed the session one day before. without giving any reason beyond due to reasons related to the constraints of the committee. As you're aware, the sessions until today have proved beyond any doubt that the Nasser family's exclusive claims to the land, and it was very clear the land committee would have to complete the re-registration process. It's evident as a part of a political decision not to re-register the Nasser family's land, the land committee finds that the only way to prevent the re-registration is to continue with endless delays and to cancel the sessions for no reason whatsoever. Clearly, the Land Registration Committee is aware that there is no legal basis to prevent the re-registration of the land, and therefore they choose to cancel the session after we've been waiting for nearly a year. No new date has yet been given. In light of this situation, we kindly request the following actions. Please forward this information to your representatives, they're talking about Capitol Hill, or your representatives in whatever country you're in, and urge them to contact Israeli authorities to demand an immediate new date for re-registration. Justice must be served after more than 30 years of struggling in the Israeli courts. 2, while the case is pending in court, Israeli settlers may continue to create facts on the ground. Please ask your government to provide protection for the Nasser family and their farm. We've already contacted the State Department about this. We're already letting our elected officials know. 3, the Tent of Nations urgently needs international presence of volunteers at the farm. The farm's right outside of Bethlehem for protection to assist with cultivating, farming, and developing the land. We're going through a very difficult time, and we greatly appreciate your support in this long journey towards justice. Thank you for your continued accompaniment and solidarity. So may God be with the Nasser family, with all the people in Gaza, with all the people in the occupied territories, and with the people in Israel, as we seek peace between Israelis and Palestinians, peace in the Middle East. May God go before us. Amen.